Hello everyone, welcome back to Immune Biology. Let's proceed with the next class. See, today we would be discussing about carcinogens. What are carcinogens and what all carcinogens are responsible for what kind of cancer development, that all we would discuss today. First of all, what is a carcinogen? See, carcinogen is an agent that causes cancer. These are of different types. You can go with the physical carcinogens, chemical carcinogens and biological carcinogen. Any physical agent causing cancer is a physical carcinogen, any chemical agent causing cancer is a chemical carcinogen, and any biological organism causing cancer is a biological carcinogen. In physical carcinogens, we would be dealing with radiations and heat. In biological carcinogens, biological agents like bacteria, a fungus, a virus, and any flatworm or any other organism that is responsible for cancer development. And in chemical carcinogens, we would deal with multiple chemicals which are responsible for development of cancer. So let's start with the chemical carcinogens. See, the first group of chemical carcinogens are the agents that are responsible for acylation, that is acylating agents, and these are with the examples of acetyl imidazole and dimethyl carbamyl chloride. These are two acylating agents that are having a direct role in development of cancers. The next very important group is polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. Now, what does the name mean? Polycyclic means these chemicals have a structure in which multiple cyclic structures are there. Aromatic means a hydrocarbon with a cyclic structure is an aromatic hydrocarbon, and hydrocarbon you very well know. So PAH or polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons are potent chemical carcinogens. And in this group, the important chemical carcinogens are anthracins like benzoanthracins, dibenzoanthracins or dimethylbenzoanthracins, benzapyrene and methylcholinethrin. Now, what are the sources of all these polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons that we encounter in our daily life and causes cancers? The sources of PAH are multiple, and the first one is tobacco. We very well know the role of tobacco in cancer development. So tobacco has got nicotine and other PAH that are responsible for cancer development. Then smoke that is produced in industries or a fire, that is also a source of PAH. Then fossil fuels like coal, petroleum, diesel, soot which is produced in vehicles, and a soot is always produced when there is an incomplete combustion. Whenever something is burned incompletely, then it produces a soot which is very visible in your vehicles. Then tar, which is used in the laying of roads, is a very good source of PAH. And then multiple industrial pollutants. So all these are the sources of PAH and are responsible for development of cancers. We would be having a healthy discussion of tobacco. See, tobacco, it is derived from some plants, and the two most important plants are Nicotiana tabacum and Nicotiana rustica. Out of these two, Nicotiana tabacum is the main source of tobacco from plants. Now, we consume tobacco in different forms like chewable forms, smoking and snuff. What does snuff means? Snuff means inhalation. That means if you take any drug or tobacco via your nasal route, then that is called as snuff. So tobacco is consumed by this way, snuffing of tobacco. If I talk about chewable, there are multiple names by which we know these tobacco products which are chewed, like jarda, tobacco pan, kheni, mishri, mawa, gutka, mainpuri. And in smoking forms, we all are aware about the cigarettes, bidi, cigar and hookah. So tobacco is consumed in many these forms. Why I am discussing about all these forms? Because tobacco is a very important source of cancers, and in India tobacco is responsible for many deaths because of cancer. Now, after PAH, that is polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, we would be discussing about the third group that includes aromatic amines and azodides. And the first example is beta-naphthylamine. Beta-naphthylamine has been shown to be associated with urinary bladder cancers, and this is a source which is encountered by the workers working in aniline dye factories and rubber industry workers. They are always exposed to beta-naphthylamine, and we have seen multiple cases of urinary bladder cancer in such kind of workers. It was a question that was asked in some exam that which type of cancer is associated with the workers working in the dye industries, and the answer was urinary bladder cancer. The next important chemical is benzidine, which is also associated with urinary bladder cancer. And the next one is azo dyes. So where are azo dyes used? So these are used for food coloring and textile industries for coloring of different textiles. As you can see in the pictures, there are multiple colors in which azo dyes are available, and these azo dyes are very responsible for hepatocellular carcinoma, that is cancer of liver. Hepato is a word which signify liver. This word is used for liver. So hepatocellular carcinoma is the carcinoma of the liver cells. Now the next group belongs to the natural chemicals groups. These are chemicals which are present in the nature and are responsible for cancer, and the very important example is aflatoxin, a toxin that is released by a fungus called as Aspergillus flavus, and this fungus is shown to grow on stored grains, the grains that we store in our home or at other sites, and in those areas Aspergillus flavus grow and they produce a toxin called as aflatoxin. If you consume such toxins, that is a very good source of food poisoning and also hepatocellular carcinoma, and especially in those patients which are suffering from hepatitis B. In this picture you can see how stored corns are affected with the Aspergillus flavus. If we consume such corn, then we would be suffering from severe food poisoning and also hepatocellular carcinoma, especially if you are a patient of hepatitis B. Now the last group belongs to the miscellaneous chemicals, and in them the important ones are nitrosamines and nitrosamides. So these are used as food preservatives, and when these food preservatives enter your stomach, then these food preservatives undergo a reaction called as nitrosylation, and that nitrosylation produces nitrosamines and nitrosamides, and they cause gastric carcinoma. Gastric carcinoma, gastric is a word used for stomach, so the carcinoma or the cancer of stomach is called as gastric carcinoma, and that's because of nitrosamines and nitrosamides. The next example are of arsenic compounds, which are responsible for basal cell carcinoma of the skin. Now let's move ahead with the physical carcinogens, and in this we would be dealing with radiations and heat. See, radiations, as we very well know, are of two types: ionizing radiations and non-ionizing radiations. In non-ionizing radiation, the primary one is the ultraviolet radiations. Now where would we encounter ultraviolet light? The sources of ultraviolet light, the first source is sunlight. In extreme sunlight there is always presence of ultraviolet radiations, though the radiations are not that intense. The UV radiations are not that intense. They belong to the low energy ultraviolet category, but still if we are exposed to the sunlight for a longer time, then we might suffer from cancers. The other is welder arcs. As we can see in the welding procedure, UV radiations are released, and that's why the person working in the welding industries always use such kind of protective equipments to protect themselves from the exposure to the ultraviolet radiations. And ultraviolet lamps, which are used for the process of sterilization in ultraviolet chamber and other uses also are also a very good source of UV light, and that might cause cancers. Now good thing about UV light is that UV light is absorbed and can penetrate only up to a few millimeters, so it would affect only to the epidermal part of the skin. And plus there is a pigment in our skin called as melanin, which helps in the absorption of ultraviolet radiations, and that won't allow ultraviolet radiations to enter into your skin cells. So melanin pigments help us preventing cancers. So people who are having albinism or fair skinned people in which the deposition of melanin is very less, they people are on the verge of risks of these cancers. So what kind of cancers are produced from ultraviolet radiations? The first example is squamous cell carcinoma of the skin, then basal cell carcinoma also on the skin, and malignant melanoma. So these three cancers are because of ultraviolet radiations. See, there are other reasons also for squamous cell carcinoma, but ultraviolet radiations produce these three kind of cancers. Now moving ahead with the ionizing radiations. Now ionizing radiations include X-rays, alpha rays, beta rays, gamma rays, radioactive isotopes, protons, neutrons. And the type of cancer which is mostly associated with these radiations, the first one is the leukemias. What are leukemias? Leukemias, as the word suggests, the suffix word used is EMIA, and as I told you, EMIA this suffix is used for association with blood. So whenever you find a term with EMIA as the suffix, that means this thing is associated with blood. And leuco word is originated from leukocytes, that is WBCs. So an increased number of leukocytes in blood is a leukemia, that is, in short, we can call it as a blood cancer. See, other than leukemias, these additions also produce thyroid cancers, skin cancers, breast, ovary, uterus, lungs and salivary gland cancers. You can see a picture of leukemia here. This is the first picture is of the normal blood. You can see plenty of RBCs, these red color cells, and plus there are some scanty WBCs, and these small yellowish cells are platelets. But in leukemia case, you can see plenty of leukemia cells. Now, what is the problem in leukemia? See, there are multiple leukemia cells. Not only in leukemia, any sort of cancer, the cancer cells or the tumor cells that are formed serve no role. And when they serve no role, they are unnecessary, encroaching the space and the nutrition of the normal functioning other cells, and that's why cancer has devastating effects. Now, what all sort of people are on higher risk of ionizing radiations, and the first group that belongs to the risk group is the doctors and the technicians that are working in the radiology department of any hospital. What are radiology departments? Those departments which are associated with the X-rays and the CT scan in hospitals. So these persons are very much susceptible to X-rays because they are working on the environments of X-rays, and they are very much susceptible to these. Now, there are some technologies by which we can save those persons by repeated exposure to those X-rays, and the one is use of lead. See, the metal lead is a very good absorber of X-rays. So the people working in the radiology departments always wear such kind of aprons which are called as lead aprons that contains a thick sheet of lead, and these thick sheet of lead won't allow X-rays to pass through these aprons to the body of the operator. So that's how we can protect them from cancers. So that's why we say, see, X-rays are also used as the treatment of cancer, which is called as radiotherapy. So we can say that X-rays is like a double-edged sword. It can cause cancer and as well as it can cure cancer. Now, the second group that I am talking about that is on the risk of cancers are the miners in radioactive elements like uranium. As we very well know, the radioactive elements like uranium are extracted from the soil, and the people working there are always on the risk of getting exposed to those harmful radiations. As you can see in this picture, a miner, a worker is working without any protective equipment and is always on the risk of cancer. This is a picture of a nearby village where uranium is extracted, and the people living there are always on the verge of radiation damages. As you can see in this picture, this child is having an abnormal size of head, that is a birth defect that is seen in people living in the nearby areas where uranium or some other radioactive elements are extracted. And all this happens because of the standard protocols that are not followed during the excavation and during the use of uranium, the way it is transported, and there are some rules and regulations that need to be followed, but when they are not followed, things like this would happen. So there you would always listen about some protests done by the villagers nearby those areas. They protest against the excavation of such material from the earth. Now I would give you some historical examples where the radiations caused a serious damage to the people living there. And the first example of is the nuclear bomb explosions in the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan in 1945 by the USA Army. Now, there were multiple casualties, multiple deaths in that bombings, but even the people who survived in those areas, they even suffered from some cancers like acute and chronic myeloid leukemias and solid tumors of breast, colon, thyroid and lungs. And even after decades, of the explosion, there were plenty of cancer patients that were diagnosed in those areas. This is a graph that is clearly showing, see, this is the time of explosion, this is the 0th day of explosion, and the first 10 to 15 years, there are multiples of thousands of leukemia cases that were diagnosed, and after 10 to 15 years there was a decline in the leukemia cases. But after those 10 to 15 years, there is a sharp increase in the patients that suffered from the cancers other than leukemia, that is breast, colon, thyroid and lung cancer patients. So that's how devastating a nuclear bomb explosion can be. The next example we very well know about is Chernobyl, where in 1986 there was a disaster, a man-made disaster, wherein there was an accidental leakage at a nuclear power plant. So what are nuclear power plants? These are the plants where nuclear energy is used to produce electrical energy, and there was an accidental leakage of radiations that caused havoc in Chernobyl. Chernobyl in 1986 was under USSR, but now is present in Ukraine, which is a neighboring country of Russia. And the last thing to summarize, and the main thing is that radiations damage DNA. Any kind of radiation, ionizing or non-ionizing, that they have a direct effect on DNA, they damage DNA, and that's how they lead to multiple mutations and multiple cancers. Now I will talk about Kangri cancer, a very special cancer that is present in the Kashmir valley of India. Now in those areas there is an earthen pot which is used by the people. This is the earthen pot that is used by them, and they keep coal in such earthen pot which are called as embers. See, these are small coals. They also include some leaves of chinar tree that grows there, and plus some burned wood which is used as a source of fuel. So they burn these coals and they put it like this under a loose gown. They wear a loose gown, and under that loose gown they keep this kangri. This earthen pot is called as kangri, and they keep this kangri near their inner thighs and the abdominal area in that loose gown to gain heat in those chilling temperatures in Kashmir valley. But the amount of heat and the amount of aromatic hydrocarbons that are produced, they cause cancers. And because maximum heat is exposed to the thigh areas and the abdominal areas, so the skin in the thigh areas and the abdomen area produce squamous cell carcinoma, and this kind of squamous cell carcinoma, that is because of use of Kangri, is called as Kangri cancer in those areas. So this is a kind of squamous cell carcinoma of the skin produced because of intense heat, smoke and soot because of the burning of coal, and all these factors contribute to the development of this squamous cell carcinoma, and this is called as Kangri cancer. The next special sort of cancer is Chutta cancer. Now what is Chutta? Chutta is this kind of cigar that is used by the people, and especially in the areas of Andhra Pradesh in India, the people there are habitual of reverse smoking. Now what is a reverse smoking? See, every cigarette has got an end which is lighted, and we keep that end out of the mouth, and the other end which is never lighted is put in the mouth. In reverse smoking, reverse thing is done. That means the end which is lighted is put in the mouth and the other end is outside the mouth, and when the patient sucks that during the smoking, then the entire heat goes inside the mouth, and the smoke that contains nicotine and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons would expose into that area, and that causes cancers. So this is called as reverse smoking, and this is seen in coastal areas of Andhra Pradesh in India, and that's why there is a higher incidence of mouth cancer because of the intense heat associated with it. In this figure you can see clearly a palatal lesion associated with cancer on the palate of one of the patient who was an addictive of reverse smoking. That is, and this kind of cancer is called as Chutta cancer because of the Chutta that is used in reverse smoking. Now moving ahead, I would discuss with for biological carcinogens, that is the carcinogens. These are the organisms that are responsible for cancer development, and in this mostly virus are associated with the cancer. The first group belongs to bacteria, and the most important bacteria is Helicobacter pylori. This is a gram-positive spiral-shaped bacteria and is present in the stomach of the human beings, and they are associated with peptic ulcers and also with gastritis cases, and these are also responsible for some cancers like gastric lymphoma and gastric carcinoma. Gastric is a word which is used for stomach, so lymphoma, that is a lymphoid tissue tumor of stomach, is called as gastric lymphoma, and epithelial cancer of gastric epithelium is called as gastric carcinoma associated with Helicobacter pylori. Fungus, as we discussed earlier, Aspergillus flavor, it produces aflatoxin, which is called as hepatocellular carcinoma, especially in the patients suffering from hepatitis B. Next is parasites, and the most important one is Schistosoma hematobium, a flatworm which is associated with squamous cell carcinoma of urinary bladder. Now the most important group of biological carcinogens is virus, and the virus which causes tumor are called as oncogenic virus. Now I would divide them into two categories: DNA oncogenic viruses and RNA oncogenic viruses. In DNA oncogenic viruses, the first one is human papilloma virus HPV, which is associated with cervical cancer and papillomas or warts. This is a wart or papilloma. Cervical cancer, what is the site where it develops? The site is cervix, that's why it is called as cervical cancer. The cervix is a narrow tube which is present between uterus and vagina in female, and the cancer that develops here is called as a cervical cancer, and in India it is a major cause of concern. So here is a small suggestion from my side. You should always go for a vaccination against cervical cancer. A vaccine is now available against cervical cancer, so a female should always be administered with this, because in India it is a major concern, and many females these days are suffering from cervical cancers. The next important virus is Epstein-Barr virus. A very important question is in NEET UG and NEET PG exams also. EBV is associated with Burkitt's lymphoma and nasopharyngeal carcinoma. Next one, HHV8, that is human herpes virus 8, and it is responsible for Kaposi's sarcoma. We would be discussing about all these lymphomas and carcinomas in our next video. Hepatitis B virus, as we discussed earlier, is responsible for hepatocellular carcinoma. In RNA oncogenic virus, the important one is human T cell lymphotropic virus, which produces a type of leukemia, and the second one is hepatitis C virus, which also causes hepatocellular carcinoma. Now you should remember the difference between hepatitis B virus and hepatitis C virus. Now both of them would produce hepatocellular carcinoma, but hepatitis B virus is a DNA virus and hepatitis C virus is an RNA virus. Now this picture is revealing a liver cancer in the liver, a sort of hepatocellular carcinoma that might be because of hepatitis B virus, hepatitis C virus, or aflatoxin produced by Aspergillus flavus. Thank you very much for watching us. Keep associated with us. Stay connected for more such informative videos. Thank you very much for watching us.